Villains, evil people, job applications. Was that too scary for you? What's even scarier is the latest antagonist of the new Persona game, Persona 5 Phantom X. Recently released globally, I've decided to take a dip in the waters. I was a bit skeptical on how good this game will be because when I saw screenshots and just small clips of how the game is, it looked pretty mid. But after 10 plus hours, now we're here, I can safely say that it's actually mid. So far, it is okay and not terrible, but disappointing. I'm running around in circles when it comes to giving my thoughts on the game, but it definitely needs a lot of polish. I still don't think that Persona is really fitting to be a gacha game, but I'm pretty sure that any game can be a gacha game if you're greedy enough. Anyways, enough of that. What we're here to discuss today is the first villain in the game that I've gone through. That is the famous Subway Slammer. This villain, it's pretty straightforward, as the name suggests. He slams innocent average civilians in the Tokyo subway. That's his whole villain shtick, like he just physically assaults women in the subway, thus the name Subway Slammer. And after playing through this first arc of Persona 5 Phantom X, what I think about this Subway Slammer, Takeyuki Kiuchi is his actual name, is probably the worst villain that I've ever seen in a Persona, but simultaneously can be the best villain at the same time. So the tropical region of Asia, aka Southeast Asia, finally got their hands on Persona 5 Phantom X, probably like the last 2 weeks. This game was originally released in April of last year, but it was only in China. But it finally released in June this year for its global release, and then July 3rd was the date we tropical mosquito-luring stinky Southeast Asians finally got their hands on. I didn't really start playing it like a couple of days after its release, but I managed to at least finish this first arc, which took a longer time than usual. Compared to Persona 5, I think I finished the first palace in a day, which I played maybe for around 6 to 8 hours. In Persona 5 Phantom X, it took me not a lot longer, but very noticeably longer, maybe 10 to 12 hours. Progression in a normal game compared to a gacha game is way easier and more rewarding because compared to Persona 5 Phantom X, just like all gacha games, you need to have specific materials to level up your persona, your characters, your weapons, etc. Which, if you want to make significant progress, you'll need to wait days and days for it because of the usual stamina gacha system that is implemented in every gacha game, which I absolutely hate. Them mechanics so much because it is so greedy and so predatory that these gacha companies don't want people to play their games for a long period of time without paying. Well, it does make sense why that happens since gacha games are basically free, but the point is, keep the gambling and microtransactions to anything but preventing people from playing the game, please. Anyways, we were introduced to the first villain of this story in the first hour of the game, and how we were introduced to this guy was that he looked like an average salaryman working in Japan on his way to work using the Tokyo subway, and suddenly an overwhelming urge built up in his body. He looks for an innocent civilian in this sea of people to be his victim of his upcoming crime that he's going to commit. Ooh, what type of crime is he going to commit? Sexual deviance crimes, murder, robbery, accusing them of racism, or even worse yet, accusing them of using AI for art? No. This man decided to charge up to an innocent woman as his target, do an American football style tackle from behind, then proceed to look down on her and smile. And that was it. That is the introduction to the Subway Slammer. What a load of baloney this is. This is such a contrast to basically every first villain that was introduced in the Persona series. What the Subway Slammer is doing is basically just being a dick. What he's doing is obviously dangerous, but it's not really a major crime compared to what Kamoshida has done, at least from what we were shown. But what's even more strange is that he's doing it in broad daylight, in rush hour where there are tons of people passing by who could clearly see him slamming people. It's not like he's hiding what he's doing, like what Kamoshida did, which was the difficult part of defeating him was that there was no tangible video or photographic proof of him physically and sexually assaulting the students that he was training. But this guy was doing it in the Tokyo subway, which has hundreds of CCTVs. Anyways, what he's doing eventually has very severe consequences as he slammed this character called Tomoko Noge, who is the friend of the main protagonist of P5X, all the way to the train tracks of the subway, which knocks her out cold and she gets sent to the hospital. That man has some of the broadest and insane shoulders that a man could possibly have. Of course, he gets away with it because in this alternate reality of Persona 5, people's consciousness is sort of making them not caring at all or looking away from the obvious debacle that is happening in front of them. I don't know if the game explained it in the beginning. I think they do, but I really wasn't paying attention, so my bad. We then go through the whole tutorial of how the metaverse works, how Persona works, how Palace shadows the collective consciousness works in the Persona universe. The game basically gives you an introductory course on how things work in Persona, just like any other game, which is actually surprising because I thought they would just skip that whole part. I assume that the people who are playing this game would be Persona fans and they don't really need to explain those things because we already know how stuff works in Persona 5, but I think they're also trying to get people outside of the Persona fandom to also play it maybe, but the game's rating on Steam, on the Play Store, and it's not looking really good. This game has fewer players playing it on Steam than Uma Musume Pretty Derby. I mean, Uma Musume is a goated game, obviously, I spent so much hours on that. But for a somewhat anticipated global release of P5X, this is not looking good. There's a plethora of things that are just wrong with the P5X global release, but that would be for another video. But in this video, it's sponsored by Figgies. Figgies are premium display collectibles designed in pixel art, and let me tell you, these look absolutely cool. These aren't your typical plastic merch, they've got real weight, solid construction, and this awesome layered 3D look thanks to their mag mount system, which lets each figure snap into a metal background for that clean gallery style setup. And speaking of backgrounds, each one is reversible, so you can basically get two display styles in one box. There's even a display base included, and if you're short on shelf space, no worries. Figgies also comes with a 3M magnetic dot, so you can mount it on your wall, locker, fridge, wherever you want to flex your collection. Now here's where it gets fun for collectors. Every Figgies box might include a hidden chase variant. We're talking about gold, silver, and bronze backgrounds. If you pull one, it'll be sealed in a special white envelope inside the box, along with a scratch card. And these are, mind you, actual metal. It's quite heavy and it looks amazing. They've also got a collector's app that just dropped. You can scan the QR code on the back of your Figgies to add it to your digital collection, see your edition and serial number, and even claim exclusive rewards. The app also works as the official store, and later this year they're launching the Figgiesverse, which sounds wild, adds more features, more collectibles, and more community. The best part, Figgies already has collectibles from Persona, Metaphor Fantasio, Sega, and even more franchises coming in future waves. If you're a fan of stylish games and awesome merch, this is definitely one to watch. And if you want to grab some, use my code NEROFIGGIES with a Z at checkout for 5% off any order over $50, or just click the link in my description down below. Again, huge thanks to Figgies for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to the video. So this goofy villain that has become a new hot meme in the Persona community isn't just some random invention. What the Subway Slammer does is actually based on a real phenomenon in Japan. It's called Butsukari Otoko, or bumping men. As the name suggests, these are dudes who purposely bump, shove, or shoulder check people, usually women, in crowded public places. For a long time, people experienced this but didn't talk about it much, often brushing it off as a one-time run-in with a dickhead. But now, with more people posting stories and videos online, it's grown into something that its own name and culture. So what makes someone a Butsukari Otoko? The name is pretty direct, but it's not just about being in a rush to work. It's seen as a deliberate act of aggression. It's using your body as a weapon in a space that should be neutral. People who've experienced this and researchers who've studied it have noticed patterns. There's the following type who stalks someone before making contact, which makes the whole thing feel extra creepy. Then there's the pick a fight type who stands his ground and acts like he's daring the other person to say something. The my own way type ignores all the unspoken rules of pedestrian flow and expects everyone to move for him. The worst is the slugger type, who uses an elbow or even a fist, turning a bump into full-blown assault. Victims are usually people who won't fight back. There might be women, your local obasan from the mochi shop down the road, someone who's like 5'4", or someone pushing a stroller or hauling shopping bags. This usually goes down in massive stations like Shinjuku or Shibuya. With hundreds of thousands of people flowing through, it's easy to body check someone and disappear back into the crowd. So why do people do this? There's really no clear-cut answer. One theory is stress, as all Japan's problems is from stress. Japan's work culture is demanding. Long hours, strict hierarchies, and pressure to conform can push people to their edge. In a society where you're expected to suppress emotions and just deal with things quietly, some see this as a way to physically let out frustration. For a brief moment, they feel like they're in control. Another theory is misogyny. Some guys see it as a way to dominate or intimidate women in public. They might justify it by saying the woman was looking at her phone, didn't move fast enough. It's a weird physical way of punishing someone for not acting the way they think they should. A third theory is just the sheer size of the city makes it easy to basically get away with it, since there are just too many people doing their own thing, not caring about too many stuff in front of them. In smaller areas, small towns, there are social consequences. In Tokyo, people feel invisible. That leads to selfishness and a breakdown of basic social respect. Getting hit like this isn't really just annoying. It can cause injuries, bruises, falls, and a lingering sense of anxiety. Victims of this may feel unsafe during their daily commute. Some avoid certain stations or change their route altogether. The simple routine starts to feel like a threat. People back then didn't used to report this kind of thing. They think it was too minor or it's their fault, especially in a culture that avoids confrontation. But that's changing. Rail companies like JR East have put up signs warning about butsukare behavior. There are more security patrols and the police have started taking it seriously. If intent is clear, someone could get charged with assault. With station cameras everywhere, some guys have been caught, fined, and even jailed. This issue really blew up in May 2018 when a video from Shinjuku station went viral. A man was seen bumping into 4 different women in 30 seconds. I don't have the video since it was deleted, or maybe it's just gone to the shadow realm, and it's like from 2018, which was 7 years ago. But Japanese news outlets confirmed it happened. The guy just walked straight through, didn't stop, didn't say sorry, didn't look back. That clip was a wake-up call. A lot of people who had similar experiences suddenly had proof that this wasn't just an accident. It was a pattern. In July 2020, police arrested a 45-year-old man named Daisuke Nagata at Keikyu Kamata Station. He hit at least 6 women in just a few days and admitted he'd done it dozens of times. He said it helped him relieve stress and gave him a quote-unquote wonderful sensation. It showed this wasn't just about pressure from work. There was a deeper, darker element. And it's not always shoulder checking. In Fukuoka, a 50-year-old university associate professor was arrested 3 separate times for hitting people with his bag during his commute. That one surprised people because it showed anyone, even someone with a respectable job or position, could be doing this. It proved that dickheads exist in every demographic. So what happens when someone decides to fight back? Sometimes it works. There's a Reddit story, of course it's Reddit, where a guy reported a bump and the station pulled the CCTV. It showed the guy had been waiting and jumped into his path. The police saw it and confronted him on the spot. That case shows how reporting and creating a paper trail can lead to real consequences. So back to the topic at hand, what do I, the arbiter of truth, think about the subway slammer? I think he's really not that great. I'm gonna be totally honest with you, dick, balls, and ass out in the open. You can see my bare skin glistening under the sun. He is as mid and as disappointing as the game. He's not incredibly bad, that it's such a crime that a character is so bad that it leads to people seeing this character spontaneously combust into flames, but he is certainly disappointing. I'm just gonna go over on what I really don't like about his character. One reason is his palace and his whole shadow counterpart in the metaverse doesn't really reflect him in real life at the present time. Now I know that the concept of shadow counterparts of people are kind of complex and sometimes it's hard to grasp or even changes throughout the series, but what we know is that in Persona 5, the villain's shadow in the metaverse definitely has a lot of similarities and an exaggerated, twisted version of themselves in real life. With the subway slammer, While it is a twisted version of him, it was not really similar to him in real life. The Subway Slammer is a salaryman who loses everything after Motoha Arai, the protagonist's friend, hits a slider ball from the Subway Slammer that really embarrasses him. Firstly, I don't even know what this all baseball terminology means. I just know that Motoha won a baseball match against the Subway Slammer. What makes this embarrassing was the fact that Motoha was still a weenie hut junior, while the Subway Slammer was an upcoming baseball prodigy. When Motoha won against him, it was in front of a crowd and a lot of people saw what happened. Subway Slammer gave an interview with a reporter there, where the reporter asked somewhere along the lines of, "You purposely lost that ball because Motoha was just a little kid and you're putting on a really good show for the audience, right?" And the Subway Slammer answered yes, nervously, and it's obvious that he's lying because he doesn't want to look like an actual fool for actually trying to catch Motoha's ball and failing with his full strength. The reporter was saying Motoha is super talented in baseball, praising all sorts of baseball related things, and throughout their interview, the Subway Slammer was clearly uncomfortable, nervous, and already looked like he had lost the plot completely. That moment when he lost to a weenie hut junior Motoha was the moment he had lost his confidence completely. That game broke him as a baseball player, and he went on to lose all of his baseballing ability, not reaching his real potential, getting into several scandals, wasting his life away, and he ended up having to fill up a job application like many of you are afraid to do so. But during this time, he ended up being a frequent goer to a hostess club, I think, and we can see how his life is spiraling down. He's drunk, he is wasting his time at a hostess club just calling for women to serve him drinks, whatever. To add salt in the wounds, a woman he was dating, I think, decided to mess up his life even more and accuse him of sexual assault, which further ruins his reputation and career as a baseball player more. While he was getting dropped from the baseball team by the team manager, he was distraught, obviously, but we can see that in this moment, he started resenting the people who did him wrong the most. Women. Yes, in this Resident Evil revelations of him getting dropped from losing his career as a baseball player, the wires in his head are starting to run with electricity. He is reaching Buddha status in enlightenment and decided that women are the enemy of his, an enemy to the world even. So when he becomes a salaryman, he always will be targeting women in the subway and doing an NFL style tackle for the fun of it. Now, the present state of the Subway Slammer does not really connect well with the Palace and the Shadow counterpart. The Shadow counterpart is basically a baseball superstar who's being portrayed as this awful, lustful, arrogant, resentful, and all-around terrible human being. Also, his palace is a sports museum, basically showcasing his baseballing achievements and what could have been his achievements, if I can recall. Correct me if I'm wrong in that. But the point is, while you can kind of make the connection with the palace to the Subway Slammer in real life, because a sports museum is to showcase the past and very valuable relics, items, and achievements connected to the person, his shadow counterpart does not at all. Comparing him to Kamoshida, they share a lot of similarities, and I can go as far as to say that they're the same people, but just from an alternate reality, which is the case because P5X is an alternate reality from the original Persona 5. Kamoshida is a horrible person, no doubt, but his palace and his shadow counterpart really reflects him a lot and is very similar to him in real life. It's just every horrible part about this guy is dialed up to an 11. His palace is a castle in Shujin Academy, and the shadow counterpart is the king of this castle. In real life, Kamoshida has his ass down on Shujin Academy, and he was like a king or a ruler in the school because Kamoshida is an Olympic gold medal athlete, which holds a lot of prestige and value that made everyone around him bend their knee and willing to look past all of the crimes he was committing towards the students there. Also, his weird relationship with Anne and her friend was also reflected in the palace, as Anne was also a shadow, but she was a lot more perverted because it's according to Kamoshida's twisted desires, but it's also reflecting in his real life counterpart with his relationship with Anne. So in comparison to the Subway Slammer, his shadow counterpart isn't really reflecting him in real life in the present time. He isn't some like famous and well-known athlete that's supposed to be on top of the world, having a whole ass museum dedicated to himself. He's just a lowly salary man who brutally bumps into women in the subway discreetly. Seeing him doing this shit discreetly is doing an absolute disservice to what he's actually doing. That man is shoving and bumping and fucking and throwing his ass around in broad daylight where there are hundreds of people passing by him. I know that his shadow counterpart is a twisted desire of his, wanting to still be the big shot, famous athlete who has everything to himself, but it does not really reflect on the crimes he was committing in the subways. There is no real relation between his shadow self and his present self. Also, I don't know if I'm paying attention enough or my brain is just completely cooked and fried at this point, but Shadow Subway Slammer doesn't appear much throughout this arc, which I don't know if that's the case as well with Kamoshida, but I feel like this whole Subway Slammer arc needs a much more fleshed out backstory and context. It especially needs more story on his present self, not just we know him as a failed baseball player, but actual story and events that happened throughout his life after failing as a baseball player. Another reason to add on the things I don't like with the Subway Slammer is that he is almost a copy of Kamoshida. I know that this game is just an alternate reality from the original Persona 5, but at least come up with something more original and interesting. The bumping man part of the Subway Slammer is probably the most interesting part, but the whole palace and his shadow counterpart isn't really anything to write home about. It's all very petty and actually incel behavior. Which brings me to the things I like about this character and why it's a pretty much of a breath of fresh air in Persona. This villain, the Subway Slammer, I like that he is a goofy and somewhat cartoonish villain. As much as I talk smack about him needing more context and his shadow counterpart not relating much to his present self, I really like that his reasoning for having his own palace and shadow self is because he lost a game against a toddler, a measly toddler. It might look pathetic to a lot of people, and it is, to be honest, but that's what I really like about his character. He is just super petty and has incel-like behavior because a little girl beats him in a baseball game. That backstory is pretty funny if you think about it. Like, how can the Subway Slammer really blame Motoha for his own failures? It's really funny and ridiculous to me, but it really shows how pathetic he is as a person. That kind of patheticness, that pettiness, makes him such a cartoonish villain, which is such a breath of fresh air in the Persona series. Also, him slamming and physically assaulting people in the subway because he just decides to for the fun of it really adds a lot more on him being a cartoon villain. Like, you can't really despise the guy, nor you can really hate him for what he's doing because it's really just over the top ridiculous shenanigans. There is literally nothing to gain from just assaulting women in the subway other than gaining some sort of satisfaction out of it. I really like that he is just the #1 women hater and he is displaying it through such ridiculous means. He's not really like Kamoshida where he is written in a way where we are supposed to really despise the guy. He's just a cartoon villain. That's really the basis of the Subway Slammer. He is a cartoon villain written very poorly in trying to make him a serious villain in the Persona universe. That's the reason why he became the new hot goofy meme for the Persona community, because he is cartoonishly evil. It's a good variety to have in the coterie of villains in Persona because all of Persona's villains are made to be really serious. When these villains are made to be serious, it's a lot harder to maintain that quality of writing because they need to consider a lot of factors like lore, reasoning, context, backstory, and all of that stuff for it to be good. But if the villains are just made to be goofy, cartoonish, and ridiculous, it's a lot easier because there are some things that the writers can really not put focus on. That's the case with the Subway Slammer. From an outside casual perspective, he's just a goofy villain that likes to assault women in the subway because he's just evil like that. It makes him quite special because of it. But if you look further into it, his character is pretty shallow and really not that good. His backstory, his reasons, and the whole palace and shadow thingy going on with him isn't a good enough reason for him to be a well-written villain. It tries to be serious, it tries to be something that it isn't. At the end of the day, he's just an arrogant asshole who was too petty and pathetic. But maybe that is the reason why it makes him a good villain too. It's just that the addition of his whole backstory and all makes it less compelling than it is, rather than just presenting him as a petty asshole. I would have really liked it more if the Subway Slammer didn't have that whole Motoha backstory and was doing the things in the subway just because he wants to as a dickhead. So is the Subway Slammer a good villain or a bad villain? To me, a disappointing villain that just needs it to be what it is. So a somewhat villain. He just needs to be a petty, arrogant asshole terrorizing the subways of Tokyo because he wants to. If he was a villain that was like that, he might be a masterpiece of a villain. His basis is already a masterpiece. It's the unnecessary additions of trying to make him a serious and understandable villain which makes him fall off hard. So he is the worst and a masterpiece of a villain, because a negative and a positive makes it in the middle, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and also get your own figgies as well. It will help this channel a lot, since there's a whole new rule in YouTube where if you engage with the video, liking, commenting, and subscribing, it becomes an actual view count rather than just being a passive viewer. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Also, updates on me streaming, since I've been saying that I will be streaming soon for the last 3 months. I think I will start streaming at the end of this month or the start of next month, which is August. So please do be there and watch my streams here on YouTube, and I will update you guys further on that. So that is all. I'll see you.